Good morning once again, class. And today we will be continuing with Module 4, which will be looking at young and middle adulthood in lifespan development. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to answer and understand the following concepts. List the transitions which mark entry into adulthood. Explain in your own words intelligence as it pertains to adulthood. What are the concepts of love and friendships in adulthood? And how do individuals view work?
The characteristics I believe define adulthood is taking on responsibility. I mean, my daughter, she was going to college, and I had told her to stay in the dorms, but she wanted to get an apartment outside of the dorms, and she realized that uh, her rent was not going to be paid unless she worked or unless someone sent it to her or something like that. She had bills, and that was responsibility. And she didn't realize that it was such responsibility until she got into that. So I believe, that adulthood, it goes along with responsibility. If you can, that's when you're an adult, when you can handle the responsibilities and know what to do. And even if you don't, you find your way.
The first question we must ask ourselves is, when does one officially become an adult? And this seems to be the age-old question for many. Indeed, the legal age to do various activities vary from country to country. Now, 16 is the age you can get your driver's license, and you must be 18 to vote, for example, here and in the Caribbean. But this is different according to the country that you are in. Let's look at marriage, for example. 18 is said to be the legal age in many jurisdictions. However, girls as young as 13 and 14, and sometimes even younger, get married with parental consent in other countries. So these things in and of themselves, cannot be clear indicators of adulthood. Indeed, though, we can say that there are some physical and some cognitive changes which take place, which mark the entry into adulthood. Now let's take a look at some general changes which usually take place at this time. Now, in one of our previous lectures, we saw that young adulthood really seems to be the prime time or the prime age for reproduction. This is the time that the majority of women get pregnant and start a family. At this time, as well, psychologically, an adult more or less becomes responsible for themselves. In other words, there's no longer the security blanket of relying on parents to make your decisions, etc. And finally, we can see the social aspects of adulthood, where in young adulthood, there are some general assumed roles or responsibilities that one takes on. Some good examples are settling down in a job or choosing a career path, finding a place to live, leaving home, being economically independent, having a committed relationship, etc., etc. And we can go on and on. And of course, the marks of adulthood really vary from culture to culture. So these examples are more suited to our culture, the Western culture. Now, throughout childhood and adolescence, our bodies are growing and developing. And in adulthood, your body reaches its prime capacity. For example, you usually stop getting taller in adulthood. But what happens after you reach your peak? Adulthood is really the time when your body starts to decline, believe it or not. Now, I must say here that the changes are so small that they are hardly noticeable. And in the following table, which is a summary from Berg, 2007, page 433, we see some examples of these changes. And I will give you some time so that you can read through these few examples for yourself. Okay, now what I didn't add here is another common example is that you usually see gray hair and thinning hair from about age 35 and onwards, generally. The brain and nervous system is also said to undergo changes as well. Changes can be seen, according to psychologists, in the growth of the frontal lobes. That is the part which deals with logic, planning, and emotional control. And this continues somewhere between 17 to 22 years of age. Now that we're speaking about the brain, it's a good time to explore the cognitive changes or developments in adulthood. This is where the whole topic of intelligence comes in. In examination of this subject, we can argue that within adulthood, there are both aspects of continuity and change in cognitive functioning. And it is here that we can view two types of intelligences to illustrate this point. We have fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence.
One of the more solid findings of cognitive change in late adulthood is between two kinds of intelligence: crystallized intelligence and fluid intelligence. Crystallized intelligence is what we know from experience, culture, learning, and education. Crystallized intelligence is used when we try to solve problems that we've seen before. Fluid intelligence is a more pure intelligence. It's raw processing speed, your mental quickness, and abstract reasoning. This is used when we attempt to solve problems that we've never seen before. It might help to look at these on the graph. Here, we see crystallized intelligence in this area. What's clear with aging is that crystallized intelligence doesn't decline. However, as we see here with fluid intelligence, it does begin to decline at about middle adulthood.
So from our short video, we see that intelligence generally remains the same in early adulthood. However, it is in middle adulthood that we see a decline of our fluid intelligence. So this is how we can have both continuity and change cognitively at this stage. We will now move on in our discussion to friendships and love in adulthood. Remember we took a look at Erickson's theory previously, and we will zone in on one section of his theory, that is intimacy versus isolation. And it is here in this stage in adulthood that Erickson believed that a person needed to find a life partner whom they could share their life with and whom they could be intimate with. And that person should be able to share their thoughts, their beliefs, and their feelings with their partner without the fear that their relationship would come to an end. On the other side of this is isolation, which of course, as it implies, means being alone. Now, love is sometimes a difficult construct to explain. We can say from general observation that partners are usually found from a variety of sources. For example, you may find someone in church or places where people meet of a similar age. The person could be from your same ethnic group, and more recently, you can find someone from an internet dating website. A lot of times we look for people who may have similar education levels, similar personalities, our beliefs are the same, or you can look for someone who's physically attractive, and the list can go on and on. But how do we really gauge whether we are in love or just infatuation? And here we can see one interesting theory, and that is Robert Sternberg's triangular theory of love, seen here on the screen. So basically, there must be three components, according to him, for there to be love, and that is intimacy, passion, and commitment. Now, when you're first in a relationship, you may have that passion, that longingness of always wanting to be with the person you don't want to be apart. But as the relationship progresses, there needs to be other factors which need to be present for there to be a lasting relationship. You must have intimacy. That is, you are telling the person your feelings and your thoughts and how you really feel on the inside, which promotes like a closeness and a connectedness. And you must also have commitment. After I have shared my thoughts and my feelings with this individual, they're not going to pick up at the slightest issue or problem and run. So these three things must be working together. Now, you may have relationships which have passion and intimacy, and according to Sternberg, this is romantic love. And you may have intimacy and commitment, which is companionate love. And you may have passion and commitment, which is fortuitous love. But in order for there to be true love, all three elements must work in tandem together, and this is known as consummate love. Friendships are also an important part of forming relationships in adulthood. It is said that we form more friendships which are long lasting at this time than any other stage of our lives. And we usually look for a lot of the same things as we do for our life partner. For example, in a friend, we may look for someone who has similar interests or common needs, etc. Friends are also important because they boost our self-esteem. We rely on them if we are going through a stressful situation, for example, and we listen to their points of view. A good example may be a woman who gets up and gets dressed, but she's not sure about what she's wearing and if it was the right choice in inverted commas. She may ask a friend what she thinks of her choice, and if the friend likes what she's wearing, she will become more confident in the choice that she has made. I think too the reason why friendships in this stage are long lasting ones is due to the fact that in secondary school we were forced to have the friends that we had because we saw them every day, we were around them every day, and so friendships developed. But however, in adulthood, when you enter the workforce, you choose the friends that you want to be around. You say to yourself, okay, you may still have those some of those friends that you had from secondary school, but any new friends that you have, you sit and you say to yourself, okay, do I want to be around this person? I'm choosing to be around this person. And so this is the reason why friendships last longer at this stage. We will continue our discussion on adulthood with one very important theme, and that is the theme of work. If I were to ask you, why would a person get up early in the morning, rush through the door and traffic to go to a job? What would be your answer? Why do people really work? I know one obvious answer as to why people work would be the financial benefits that are derived, and in other words, the paycheck. But there is more to why people work. If only a paycheck was the only reason why a person will work, then how do we explain millionaires and billionaires working? Or why would you, as a student, want a particular type of job? So I think there are many other reasons why a person would work, and scholars also agree. And if you read through your textbook on page 420, there are lots of other reasons that you can view and you can read through. For example, a search for meaning in life or feeling useful. People like to feel as though they are making a valuable contribution to the world. Other things are excitement, a chance to showcase one's creativity, or for personal growth, for example. And some of these examples clearly come to light when we view the fact that many years ago, women were the ones who stayed at home and men were the ones who worked. And we still have some stay-at-home mothers today. But in a large number of marriages and households, we see dual earners, meaning both men and women in the household work. And this could be because of financial reasons. The couple would have more earning capacity, or many times because women want to feel a sense of accomplishment or personal satisfaction with their lives. As a side note, we see recently the advent of paternal childcare. That is the father staying at home. And many times in these cases, it is due to the fact that the woman in the relationship may be earning more money. So that is an interesting trend to watch. You can read up more on this topic in your textbook and look for occupational development, job satisfaction, and bias and discrimination in the workforce. We have come again to the end of our lesson today on adulthood, and I hope that you have learned something about this stage in life. Always remember, please feel free to ask any questions that you may have and continue to have a good day.